Something appears to be happening in Brazil. There have been a number of reports of military mobilization throughout the nation in preparation for what may indeed be an armed intervention in their current constitutional crisis. We're going to see precisely what's going on in Brazil. We're going to learn what led up to this current constitutional crisis, and make sure to stick with me to the very end of this video when we'll find out what to expect in the next 48 hours. You are not going to want to miss this. Video of military mobilization throughout the nation of Brazil are becoming more and more frequent of late, a mobilization that suggests the military may be ready to act and act decisively in the midst of Brazil's current constitutional crisis. On October 30th of this year, the ultra-leftist Lula da Silva barely defeated the incumbent nationalist populist president Jair Bolsonaro, winning by just 1 percentage point. Now, this comes after he was touted for months by the legacy media, both in Brazil and here in the United States, to win by upwards of 15 or 20 points. The whole controversy over whether Lula was even allowed to run in the first place was completely ignored by the complicit media. In 2017, Lula, who has a long track record of supporting drug dealers and all kinds of illicit activity in Brazil, was sentenced to 9 years in prison after being convicted in one of the biggest corruption scandals in Brazil's history, what was called Operation Car Wash. He was, up until that point, a very successful president. He served 2 terms during a relatively prosperous period in Brazil's history, so he does remain very popular, particularly among Brazil's poor. But his corruption did indeed eventually catch up with him, and he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. And that, of course, opened the door for the rise of Jair Bolsonaro, Brazil's first nationalist populist candidate. He's been hailed as the Trump of the tropics, and he won in a landslide in 2018. However, something sinister happened since then. What we have to understand is that in Brazil, it's not so much the president that's been invested with supreme power, as it were. The president actually has rather limited power and influence in Brazilian politics. The real power, when all's said and done, resides in Brazil's Supreme Court. The court itself is comprised of 11 justices, and of those 11, 7 were appointed by Lula, as well as Dilma Rousseff, who took over from Lula. Only 2 were appointed by Bolsonaro, and the court is seen, at least by half the population, as a puppet court for Lula. Whatever Lula wants, 7 of the 11 judges deliver, and one of them did just that. To the shock of millions, without any explanation, one of the Supreme Court justices overturned Lula's conviction, simply stating that it lacked necessary justification. And that in turn freed Lula not merely from jail, but once again to run for president, which he did with the full endorsement, the monolithic endorsement of the far left woke neo-Marxist media, most especially our media here in the United States. However, when election day arrived, the runoff in late October, Lula barely squeaked by. And needless to say, tens of millions of Brazilian patriots didn't buy the integrity of the election. Since then, Brazilians by the millions have taken to the streets in defiance of the presidential election, with no sign that these ongoing several-month-long protests are going to stop anytime soon. The problem is that Brazil does not have an equivalent to an election oversight commission, so the people feel like they have no recourse to challenge perceived election irregularities, and that is precisely where their military comes in. There's a constitutional provision called Article 142 that allows for military intervention in the case of a constitutional crisis. And given that Bolsonaro has yet to concede to Lula, and given the shenanigans that the corrupt Supreme Court has engaged in, and tens of millions of Brazilians out on the streets, well, obviously those tens of millions are calling for the military to intervene. And that's precisely what we may be seeing. But first, gang, it's Christmas time, and what could possibly make a better gift for your loved ones than a warm, soft, comfortable MyPillow product from the one and only Mike Lindell. And the best part is you're going to save nearly 70% if you use my special promo code Turley. Promo code Turley will get you the same discount on all of Mike's nearly 200 MyPillow products. So, for example, if you get the classic MyPillow, which is normally $69.98, and then you use promo code Turley, Christmas magic turns that into $19.98, and that applies to over 200 products in their catalog. So don't wait. Click on that link below. Give the gift of comfort and warmth to your loved ones. Support one of America's most amazing patriots, Mike Lindell, and get the best savings ever. Click on that link below today. Here's the latest from Matt Tierman, an analyst of Brazilian politics, on where things stand right now in their nation.
Give me 60 seconds on the on Brazil, Bolsonaro, and the evangelical Christians. Are they going to stand up and make sure that Lula, the international criminal, is not going to steal their country?
Yes. They have to. Otherwise, Brazil is Venezuela in 3 months. Gulags will be built. They are going to war on the streets. Last night, a source told me that the military tribunal, the Supreme Court of the military, put an ultimatum to the electoral court that we talk about every day and said, you give us the machines by midnight last night. Wow. They ignored it. Wow. This gives them the pretext this week to act and invoke Article 142. Wow. And you're right, it is a prayerful movement on the ground. It is a Christian, evangelical, and Catholic movement. So at 4 a.m. yesterday morning, the federal police that report to the Supreme Court, Marias, arrested one of the leading pastors. He was asleep in his tent at 4 a.m. They dragged him out of the tent. They arrested him, and then the other protesters got video of 12 police cars, sirens blazing, as they took him to jail. This is Stalinism. This is Venezuela. If they do not win, the Southern Hemisphere is gone. China controls it, and they're coming for us next.
By the way, if they
better win.
If they defeat the evangelical Christians in Brazil, they're going to do it here in the United States. It's coming. We have to pray for everybody in Brazil and have their back.
They appreciate you so much, you, Tucker, Emerald, the few outlets that are covering this, because the revolution will not be televised. Well, starting next week, after they invoke Article 142, global media is going to wake up and call this a coup. No, this is the quelling of a coup, constitutionally endowed by the Constitution, Article 142, hopefully coming in the next 48 hours.
How do people?
So there you heard it. We may be seeing something in the next 48 hours. It's also being reported that a Bolsonaro ally, General Gerardo Monteiro, spoke to protesters and Bolsonaro supporters outside an army headquarters, telling them to make sure to hang up their stockings on their mantelpiece for Santa because he's coming this Christmas wearing camouflage. And a not-so-subtle assurance that the military will indeed resolve this. Obviously, this is a developing story, and we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on things. Lula is supposed to be sworn in on January 1st, so we're just looking at a 10-day window for the military to act if it so chooses to do so, and we'll certainly be keeping our eyes on how things develop. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button, and you'll definitely want to check out my latest video on 3 bombshells coming from the latest Twitter files. You're not going to want to miss that, so make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.